So this is really for some of you smaller fleet owners out there. You know, you may have a dozen vehicles or 50 or 100, and so this is for you. What should a fleet management operation look like? If you bring on a fleet manager, maybe you can afford one now, maybe you can't afford one because you're still a small business that's growing, but if you bring on a fleet manager, what should they accomplish for you? And really there's three key things that stand out. One is, and it should be at the top of everyone's list that has equipment, that operates equipment in the construction industry or transportation industry, is safety. By having a good fleet management program, processes in place, and a vision for what your company wants to look like, you can mitigate the risk when it comes to safety. And that'll do a couple of things. That will, one, reduce your insurance costs as you scale your organization, and two, it will build trust and the relationship with the employees, and three, it will help you with your reputation amongst your customers or your competition or inside your industry. And all three of those are very valuable. And as your business grows, all three of those are very important. The second thing a good fleet management operation should do, no matter what size business you have, is it should reduce catastrophic failures. So what is a catastrophic failure? With any equipment, on-road, off-road equipment, a catastrophic failure is something that occurs that's almost always preventable. And what it does is it causes the equipment to be down. It's usually engine, transmission, or differential related. And it usually tends to lead to a, do we repair this equipment? Do we sell this equipment? What do we do with this equipment? And it usually catches most smaller organizations off guard, and they have to deal with having their equipment not being used. There's no utilization on it because it's in the shop, or they're making a decision on how to proceed on it. Those catastrophic failures are preventable, and that's what a fleet management program should be doing for you with the processes in place. It should really mitigate and almost eliminate catastrophic failures. They don't need to happen, they shouldn't happen, and in the case of, except for outliers, they can be mitigated. And we don't really plan business things around outliers, they just are what they are. But we control what we can control, which means mitigating your risk when it comes to catastrophic failures. The third thing that a good fleet management program should do is reduce your life cycle costs on your equipment. No matter if it's an on-road piece of equipment or off-road piece of equipment, your total life cycle cost of that equipment from the time you purchase it till the time you sell it, that piece of equipment, you want to reduce those costs as low as possible while keeping it safe, while mitigating catastrophic failures. You want to reduce that overall life cycle cost. And that's really where preventive maintenance comes into play. When you perform oil changes and you do the maintenance on the equipment, you're less likely to have catastrophic failures, which means the equipment's less likely to cost you in both downtime and real costs by having maintained it. And you know, there's a couple things that any organization can do. And a lot of companies, even big companies, leave it up to the mechanics that they have or the vendors they use to maintain the equipment, and that is just not acceptable. It's just not. You can't build an organization around that because the mechanics are not using the equipment. Your vendor mechanics are not using the equipment. Who's using the equipment? Well, your operators are. Your on-the-ground people that are adding to the bottom line of the company are using it, and they have to be involved in maintaining that equipment. There's no other option. And you can't pass the buck on to mechanics because mechanics only see that equipment usually when it needs maintenance or it has problems. And the operators see it every day. So there has to be a pre-operational inspection that goes on, or a pre-trip inspection, and the operators have to be involved, which means they have to be knowledgeable about what to check, how to use the equipment, how to inspect it, what to look for, which means your mechanics need to be involved with your operators need to be involved with your mechanics, you need to have ongoing training with manufacturers, and everybody needs to be knowledgeable on that equipment. And what that will do is it will lead back to operators using that equipment safely. It'll lead back to mitigating or eliminating catastrophic failures, and it'll lead to lower life cycle costs over the life that you own that piece of equipment. And that's what a fleet management program should do, is it should tie in all three of those and involve the operators, involve the organization and the equipment, and really train on what's going on, and have some good processes in place that are scalable, that you can grow your business around, no matter who leaves your organization or who enters your organization. They can be trained and they can be plugged into a position where they're able to use a piece of equipment safely, they're able to do inspections on it, and it benefits everybody. You know, and the one thing that for off-road equipment, the one thing that is always not done to the level that it should be is lubricating it. Just lubricating the off-road equipment, which is entirely good for operators to do, would prevent so many failures with the equipment, so many issues. But you know, there's just a real lack of lubrication out there on the equipment. It just gets used out there. Construction equipment gets used, it doesn't get lubricated properly, or nobody knows how to lubricate it properly. They can't even find the Zerk fittings. If you want to test some of your mechanics or some of your employees, take them out to a piece of equipment and ask them to find the Zerk fittings on it. And you can look up in the maintenance manual where those Zerk fittings are and have them see if they can identify them without looking at the maintenance manual. They'll probably miss a few or several, and those are the components that always fail. You know which Zerk fittings get missed? The ones that are hardest to get to, because nobody wants to take the time, so it never gets lubricated. Meanwhile, the one that's right up front that everybody can reach, it gets lubricated, so that component never fails. So the hardest component to get to is the one that never gets lubricated, and that's an issue. And that's where it becomes expensive, because if it's hard to get to lubricate it, it's difficult to get to replace it. So for you smaller fleets out there, you know, you don't necessarily need a fleet manager, but you should have processes in place to make sure the operators are educated on their equipment, to involve them in the maintenance of it, the inspections of it, and to follow up with that. You know, hold them accountable for it, and build some really good scalable processes. Anyways, I hope that helps. Hope you found it interesting. Bye.